Thing. Very good. Thank you. And so once again, Ron Clough with Manufacturing Works. Good afternoon to everyone. Today we're going to be talking about cyber insurance, readiness, and understanding, and we're going to turn it into a two-part session. A lot of information. We've got with us two subject matter experts. We've got Diane Meglin at V2 Technology, who's joining us today, and Todd Lancaster from the Oswald companies. A little bit about them real quick. Diane, industrial engineer from Purdue, extensive experience in project management and supply chain. She's worked in various manufacturing businesses. And along with her work at V2 Technologies, Diana is also an advisor on an advisory board for Case Western Reserve University. Todd, local graduate here at Kent State University, brings a career full of risk management strategies to our network with the Oswald companies. And again, along with his duties at Oswald companies, he's a volunteer, and both for Manufacturing Works on our membership committee, and he's a board member of the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diana and Todd. Thank you.
Diana, you're muted.
You are right. Hi there. Are we going to go to the next slide? Okay. So I think we were going to do this one in the chat. So we're just going to have an icebreaker question for the folks here just to get everybody excited about October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're just in the chat. If you could just respond with what was the make and model of your first car? Got the old Ford Mustang, very nice. The Corsica, Cavalier, Mustang. I had this, a lot of, I'm going to put mine in as well, Chevy Spectrum. We have a lot of American-made vehicles here.
I was going to say a lot of Chevys.
Yeah, that was big. Oh, the old Monza. And Robert, you were getting pretty racy out there with the Firebird. I bet you were doing some cruising in that thing.
How many tickets did a new driver get with a Firebird?
Uh-oh, Robert's got to answer. He's gonna maybe keep it anonymous.
Yeah, I would too.
We don't want to let the cat out of the bag there. Okay, so a lot of different cars, which is great. I'm sure they all had great insurance. I know back then we didn't have cyber insurance for some of us, but it's a reality now. So I'll talk a little bit about V2 Technology and what we do. We're an IT services provider for small to mid-sized businesses in Northeast Ohio and Greater Ohio. Really work to help with technology risk, help support businesses with their IT needs. And all of this is under our MyCIO umbrella. We recently founded a cyber advisory board, Cyber Advisory Council in Northeast Ohio to help support businesses, provide outreach and knowledge and awareness of cybersecurity in the area. So that is V2 Technology.
All right, thanks, Diana. Oswald's an employee-owned insurance broker and risk management firm here, headquartered in Cleveland. We do have offices outside of Cleveland in the Northeast Ohio area, in Akron, Medina, down to Columbus and Cincinnati. So we're a regional broker, but headquartered and been in Cleveland for over 125 years, employee owned, and we work with partners to drive measurable results is one of the key things that we think that we bring to the table. And as Diana mentioned, we are part of that newly formed Cyber Advisory Council of Northeast Ohio with V2 Technologies. And we've been working with Diana and the team now for a few months, partnering on a few things. So we're looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to pose a couple questions for you guys to answer in the poll. Let's talk first about cyber attacks. So the question is, how many cyber attacks per day did small to mid-sized businesses experience in 2021? So we're going to throw that out to the team. We have 3 options for the answer there. If everybody can take a minute to respond.
While we're waiting for the results, I had a quick question for both of you on that Cyber Advisory Council. Is there any opportunity for others to participate in that?
Yeah, actually, we're going to be having our an event for Q4 in November, November 9th. It's going to be a sign up basis, limited availability, but more information is going to be coming out on that in the next couple of weeks. So it will be a good topic around cybersecurity, and Todd will be there along with representation from Westfield Bank and Brennan Man and Diamond and legal firm.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so we got the answers here. 12,000, is it 12,000, 27,000, or 31,000? And the answer is 31,000. So 22% of you guys got it right. You know, really it's the amount is increasing as we speak, and it's, you know, crippling businesses. So especially businesses under 25 million, there's an increase in the attacks on those type of businesses. So definitely a large number, and something we all probably didn't realize was so big. Okay, let's go to the next question real quick. So what is the average downtime for a business after a ransomware incident? So we're talking days here. So we've got 3 options: 17 days, 23 days, or 52 days. So thinking about your business, and if something would happen with a ransomware, how many days would you be back up and running in business? So let's answer that. Submit your answers and we'll see what we get there. All 3 answers are a long time. So we've got, so the winner here is 23 days is the most popular, and the answer actually is 23 days. So that is currently the average downtime for a business after an incident. So significant for sure. So as we talk in the next 2 sessions, we're going to be helping you understand how insurance plays a part in all of that. So what are we going to go through for today and for Thursday? Really today, we're going to focus on number 1, recognizing the importance of insurance, cyber insurance. And Todd's going to spend the majority of the time today walking you through the details of cyber insurance. There's several components to it. It's becoming more complicated. So our goal is to help you understand it more fully. On Thursday, we're going to be doing numbers 2 and 3 here, the steps to look at good cyber hygiene, making sure you're getting ready for cyber insurance. So there's a bit to do, and it does take some time. It's not just a quick thing as maybe insurance renewals used to be. And then lastly, we're going to understand how companies are utilizing cyber insurance. You may have friends who are have had claims, maybe you don't. We're actually going to walk through a case study in that regards to show you how companies are utilizing the cyber insurance. So number 1 will be today, and then 2 and 3 will be on Thursday. So I wanted to then, before I turn it over to Todd, just talk a little bit about how we're going to work together. So you know, we've partnered with insurance companies because we really have to all work together for your businesses to be successful in cyber insurance. So Oswald really helps us understand how the cyber insurance works. We can come in and help you get ready for that. And then together, as we walk through the utilization, you're going to see it's V2 technology, your IT services provider, and your insurance company. So we partner with Oswald to help work together to help companies utilize their insurance when they need to, because it is very involved and does require some thought to the process of utilizing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd to start us in the insurance understanding area.
No, I know insurance is not a topic that a lot of people want to spend time on, or money for that matter on, but obviously with today's state of the market and the risks that are really affecting businesses, cyber is a key component of everybody's insurance program. Some of you may or may not have an insurance policy, but we'll talk about that later. But today, the focus is really to get you to understand what the coverage provides. I still hear a lot of companies that don't have it or ask questions. You know, what does it really provide? What will it do for us? So today we'll spend a lot of time on that. And can you flip the slide, please? So the first thing I want to mention is that if you think about your business, if an incident happened, whether it was ransomware, whatever the incident was, and you came into your office and nobody could access their computer, couldn't do email, they couldn't do anything, what would you do? What would the next step be? Who would your first call be? So this insurance policy that you buy and the advisor that you work with from a broker standpoint can really be that outsourced disaster recovery plan. It's really a key component of that plan. So that's one thing that I like to talk to people about is if they're questioning whether or not they need it. We're not suggesting that everybody needs to buy it, although 99.9% of the time that's what is chosen to do. But you need to have a plan in place, and this could be a key component of that plan. So the overview of the coverage. The first part of the coverage that I'm going to spend a lot of time on is the first party coverages. So these are losses or expenses that the policy owner incurs, which would be you, the business owner, or the policy holder. And then we'll spend some time talking about the third party coverages that also come with the policy, and that's economic damages suffered by others, right? Whether it be your clients, your employees, those are different examples of that. But first, we'll spend a lot of the time focusing on the first party coverages because that's kind of the trend of what we're seeing now from a claims perspective. So some examples of the first party coverages are, we've talked a lot about the incident response, right? So what are you going to do to fix the problem? So this is where insurance carriers have specific people that know what to do, know how to handle a situation, and they can bring everybody in to kind of respond accordingly. There's cyber business interruption coverage. So if you're shut down, like we said, for 23 days, imagine being down for 3 weeks. This insurance policy that you buy with cyber coverage will provide coverage for that loss of revenue for your business for those days. But it's only in that cyber policy if it's a cyber incident. It will not be picked up, coverage will not be picked up through any other property or general liability policy because there is no property damage to trigger the coverage. So it has to be specifically listed within a cyber policy to cover that. And we mentioned the dependent cyber business interruption. So this is maybe a third party that you rely on that had a cyber breach. So now there's a delay in the overall supply chain or whatnot that slows down your business. So there is some coverage afforded to you there. And then the data recovery and then the extortion. So that if there is a ransomware event and they want you to pay X amount of dollars to get access to the system back up, that coverage is also afforded by the policy. So this is where we're seeing a lot of the trend. You've probably heard a ton about ransomware, a ton about social engineering. This is also a coverage that's, for you as a business owner, for the policy owner. There's where the coverages and the claims are happening mostly today. And I'll go into a little bit of those in the next slides to kind of dive into a little bit more detail. So the extortion, right? This is the ransomware where a bad actor gains access into your system. They lock everything down. You can't do anything at all, and they demand X amount of dollars. And most of the time it's in some form of cryptocurrency, which, you talk to a lot of business owners. It's like, I don't even know how to go about, paying somebody in cryptocurrency, but the carriers do, as you can imagine, they pay these claims on a consistent basis. So they understand the process, but that is a huge component. That's what's driving the market right now. And I'm sure you guys have all heard about it in the news, and it's happening across the board. It's not just the large companies that you hear about, the pipelines and Targets and Anthem. We're seeing a claim. We're averaging or looking to have 60 cyber claims this year in the calendar year. So that's more than one a week, just with our clients. Next slide. So here's another question. Diana, if you want to jump in and take the poll question so I can take a breather so people don't have to hear me talk the whole time.
Sure. So what was the national average actually, of ransomware demand for 2020? So a couple years back, but we have $100,000 ransomware demand, $250,000 or $500,000 for ransomware demand. So let's answer the question. Okay. Everybody have a chance to answer that? So yeah, this was in the heart of the pandemic. So in 2020, actually, the average ransomware demand across the country was $500,000. So many of you answered 250, but it was actually $500,000. And actually in 2019, it was $300,000. So it almost doubled in 1 year. And, you know, everybody working remote in 2020, a lot of people were susceptible to, you know, especially email phishing. So definitely on the upswing related to ransomware.
Next slide, Am. So what's the impact, right? Obviously, there's the demand for the payment, but there's also the restoration costs. So, you know, a lot of times you actually get back into your system, but you got to restore things to the way they were. Things aren't, you know, what they used to be. So you have to, all of that cost, the legal cost. IT forensic is a huge cost to come in and figure out where it happened, how long they've been in the system, what all has been infected or affected, I should say, and that cost can easily run up to $25,000 to $50,000 just to have them spend the time on that. And then we talked about the business income loss due to the downtime. So those are some of the impacts of these incidents. One part of the coverage that is not clearly understood and is oftentimes not part of a lot of policies that gets overlooked is what we call bricking coverage. So if you think about it, when somebody gets into the system, whether it is it's not just the software, right? It's also the hardware. So you think about servers and on your laptops and things, sometimes they're damaged so much that it's more cost effective to just throw it out and buy new, or needed to buy new. So if you don't have this coverage within your cyber policy now, those losses to replace the property will not be covered under the property policy like we talked about before. So you would have to have that coverage within your cyber policy.
Yeah, and I guess just to add to that a little bit, Todd, a lot of people are moving away from on-premise servers to the cloud. So that helps alleviate that as a potential, you know, coverage need. And I believe some recent stats around Microsoft Exchange servers, on-premise Exchange servers are a prime candidate for hacking. So if you're still on-premise with the Exchange server and your email, you may want to be thinking about moving to the cloud Microsoft 365 version to help close that risk gap for your business. So just an area to think about there.
Good point. Good point. One thing I will say about the cloud, because we hear that a lot, right? Like everything's backed up by the cloud. We work with so-and-so IT company. One thing I will say, what we tell our clients all the time is you are outsourcing the function. You're not outsourcing the liability. And what that means is if it was through your company, through your system, you're going to get pulled into the lawsuit. And sometimes the contracts you have with certain IT providers and the cloud providers, just think if that cloud provider gets hit with an incident, they probably do business with X amount of companies, right? Let's say it's 100 companies. So is their insurance coverage going to indemnify you completely? Probably not. So you want to make sure that you understand that relationship as well. Next slide, please, Ann. Another issue with these incidents is obviously the reputational harm, right? So somebody finds out, your customers find out that you had an incident, you know, items might have been breached. They're a little bit uncertain of if they want to continue to do business with you, and so on. So that's definitely something that this policy will provide, right? It's not just the recovery of the, you know, whether it's lost revenue or the bricking coverage that I mentioned before, but it's also that reputational harm. There's somebody there to manage the situation, manage the communication to the public for you, let you know that everything's been fixed, and hopefully kind of minimize that effect from any lost revenue or lost customers that you might have. So here's another polling question on that topic. So what percentage of buyers are likely to avoid companies that suffered a cyber attack in the last year? And there are some choices for you.
What?
And the answer is like a game show host. Ooh, a lot of you thought 66%. I believe the answer was actually 59%. So not too far off, but as you can imagine having, you know, more than 50%, almost 60% of your clients, customers, buyers kind of skeptical of doing business with you because of a cyber incident. So again, we kind of hit on this on the last slide. So huge impact, right? Customer attrition occurs, which results in a loss of business, disruption to the business operations while you're dealing with the crisis. I mean, that's really the biggest headache from a business owner standpoint is, yes, we know we're going to have a loss of revenue, but just the time and the disruption that it causes within the whole organization is a huge deal. And then the potential liability for many of the individuals or companies that are affected. So if any of their information was affected in this incident, then, you know, there's obviously some impact there. And we talked a lot about this already with the reputational harm. It's kind of a little bit repetitive. I apologize, but, and you can see in the incident response and event management, the legal fees, forensics, notification services. So if you're, if third-party information was compromised, there's going to have to be notification sent out. So it used to be, you know, right around $200 per person or per record that was compromised. And I think that cost has even gone up to almost $500. So if you can imagine, if you're a retailer, this doesn't necessarily come and play with manufacturing, but you know, your customers, your clients, their information, it could be pretty costly and get up there pretty fast. Next slide, please. And the cyber terrorism, you know, we hear this a lot, right? The bad actors might be overseas, they might be from a different country or whatever. And in most insurance policies, whether you're talking about property, general liability, there's always a terrorism exclusion, or you can buy it back with a TRIA, it's called Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. There's actually a buyback or a carve back within the cyber policy that if it is determined that it was a terrorism event, then there is still going to be coverage provided for you. That's what I just kind of hit on. So all the defense cost, everything that we talked about before, even if it was a terrorist event, will be covered. Next slide, please. So the third party coverages. So this is, you know, obviously losses that somebody outside, not you as the business owner have, but your customers, your clients. So if their information was compromised, if there was any payment card, credit card information that was compromised, you know, contracts, the regulatory fines and penalties, right? You're held responsible. There's different California Protection Acts and GDPRs over in Europe, if you're doing business overseas, that they could come back and fine you and penalize you for not keeping the information secure. So those are also those fees are paid for. And then obviously any media liability, if there was any, I've seen incidents where a marketing firm or advertising firm was hacked and there was negative publicity about one of their competitors was leaked out. That would even be covered as well. So there's a lot of wide range of coverages that are provided within the policy. So I think at that point, before we go to the next slide, I want to pause for a second and ask if anybody wants to put it in the chat or unmute yourself if you have any concerns about the coverage, first party, third party, if you have any questions to clarify before we go any further. Because I think even though this has been around for quite a while, the cyber insurance and the cyber policies, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what it covers, how it would, help us recover. So I want to make sure that this coverage aspect of it is clear.
Hey, Todd, I have a question for you. This is
Yes.
Andy, Midwest. With our IT companies telling us that a lot of this stuff is regulated and we have to have our servers and, all these different things tied to our servers and our backups and our securities and firewalls and all that stuff. So when you're, and do the insurance companies dictate what you have to have?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that on Thursday, but I can give you, they won't dictate certain things that you have to have. But there's definitely a much stricter underwriting around, how the protection, the steps that you guys have taken to make sure incidents don't happen. A lot of talk about multi-factor authentication and backups and encryption, and Diana can probably speak to a lot of these things better than I can, but there's a lot stricter guidelines that they're placing, which will ultimately affect either the availability of insurance if you don't have a lot of those in place, or the pricing of the insurance. But they're not going to come in and say you have to do this or we won't offer you. They just, they might deny
If
coverage.
they're writing a policy, they'll check what we have.
Correct. And that's been
Our IT group.
And that's been one of the main conversations that we've had with our customers and prospects is these insurance renewals, especially for cyber, aren't something that should be done in the weeks before the renewal. You should be spending a lot of time, 4, 5, 6 months ahead of time, look through the application, look through the questions that the underwriters are asking, work with folks like Diana and V2 or your IT provider to make sure you have all those things in place so that when it comes to getting those options for the renewal, that you have, you're considered best in class and you can get the best result from an insurance coverage standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Another incident that I want to highlight that Diana and I keep calling, I don't call them breaches, right? If you've seen, I call them incidents a lot because maybe it wasn't a breach. Maybe it was, it was the actor was in, but just for a quick amount of time. But anytime you use the breach word, it kind of throws a lot of red flags. So I use incidents. But a common incident that we've seen is the bad actor getting into your system, most likely through a user, one of your employees. They click on the wrong thing or whatever, and that bad actor gets access to the email or whatever it may be. And then you get the faulty email, right? Where the email comes in from who, you think it's the right vendor. You think it's, a customer of yours, but it's actually a bad actor. And they either tell you that their bank routing number has changed or they request, different things. And we call that, from an insurance perspective, especially if it's a financial loss where you do pay money that goes out the door, we call that social engineering. So it's the bad actor acting like somebody else, engineering the email to make it look legitimate. You pay the money to the bad actor, and then your real customer comes back or supplier comes back and say, hey, you're 30 days late. And you're like, no, I paid you. That has been a common occurrence. So training, which Diana will talk about, is a key aspect to training your employees, knowing what to look for. But there is coverage within the policy to cover that. But what they've been doing now, because that's been such a high risk factor for the insurance companies, is sublimiting the limits. So most cyber policies at the start, you'll have $1 million of limit, aggregate limit for all of these incidents and coverages. But the social engineering, they've been sublimating at to either 100,000, 250,000 is probably the most I've seen. But just a common occurrence that we know a lot of people have heard about, but there is coverage within the policy.
Yeah, and I guess just to add to that, there's also additional tools that you can implement to help, prevent those social engineering attacks. So obviously the most common one, and we're talking a lot about this on Thursday, is MFA, but to some of the stuff that Todd's talking about, examples of things that happen, people click on the wrong thing. There's also additional logging and tracking of activities that are happening. Like, so for example, if you have your Microsoft email exchange in the cloud, there's free logging services that your IT provider can be looking at to see if unusual behavior is happening. But there's also like additional conditional tracking and logging that can be done to say, like, I want someone to be alerted if someone outside the United States is trying to access my stuff. So there are a lot of additional tools and things that we'll talk a lot about on Thursday that you can deploy to help provide that extra level of security beyond your user just clicking on something and getting trained. But because we know that social engineering is so common.
Yeah. Good stuff. Next slide, Ann. Thank you.
While we're going to that, I had a quick question for everyone, and that is just percentage-wise, any information on how many of these attacks do occur from outside our borders, or are they all coming, or is there any general theme to that?
I don't know the exact stats, Ron, but I can tell you that it's majority of the time it's within the United States where the bad actor is, but there are definitely situations, and I would say it may be a fourth of the time, if I were to guess, from our claims that we've seen where it's been outside of the country. And sometimes we've even had an incident where the FBI has caught the bad actor in the middle of the situation of the ransomware incident, and we thought that was a good thing. The bad actor was caught. They didn't have to pay the ransomware, but the bad part of it was they didn't give them, let's call it, the keys to the kingdom to unlock their system. So they were still shut down. They still had to take almost 3 weeks to figure out, where they were, how to get access back up. So the business interruption claim was a big one. So,
okay. All right, thank you.
But I don't have a direct answer to that as far as percentage of, within the US to outside.
Yeah, I don't have an answer on that either, but obviously I think that, targeting away from larger businesses, now moving more towards small businesses, just because of the fact that maybe they don't have all of the securities in place. So, that's a big trend up for sure.
And this,
Thank you.
This is kind of a closing slide for today. I know we have a couple other things, but I like to bring this up because this is kind of an all-encompassing of what is provided by a cyber liability policy. Now, when I say this is all, we have, there's a lot of different policies, a lot of different carriers. We try to find best in class as far as coverage goes, because we know what is a lot, or what's out there and what we can get. So not all policies are the same, but from what we see, this is what can be afforded with coverage and where we're seeing a lot of the claims paid. So we talked about the legal counsel, IT forensics, work with the ransomware negotiators on whether or not to pay the claim and to go ahead and pay it if it's chosen to do so. And one thing that I will say with that, when you sign and put in place an insurance policy, almost every time you're signing the rights to the insurance company to pay the claim. If they think it's the best thing to do to pay the ransomware, they have the right to do it because they know the costs that might be incurred if they don't. So I want to say that, because a lot of people will say, you know what, we're not going to pay the ransomware. And sometimes that's the choice, and you can talk to the insurance company, the insurance carrier, and they will agree with that. But they have the right to pay if they think it's in the best course of action. And then again, assist with the decryption, replacement of electronic equipment, forensic accountants. The cost of that can get pretty high, but I will say, in certain situations, we have a claims team here at Oswald that represents our clients. So you're not dealing directly with the carrier. We had an incident where we suggested they get an outside forensic accountant. They pay them because you can imagine the insurance company and their accountants aren't looking to pay you the highest dollar amount. So sometimes it's in your best interest to get your own accountant that deals with this on a day-to-day basis to make sure that that business interruption loss, you get what you should get. In this incident I'm referring to, they were down almost 3 weeks. The insurance company said the business interruption loss was $400,000. Our accountant that we hired got it up to $800,000. So you can see it's worth the money sometimes in the right situation to have your own forensic accountant to go in and kind of determine that to fight on your behalf. So work with a good advisor and good partner to make sure that you're getting the best result. Ultimately, insurance policy is there to pay claims, but you need to make sure you're getting folks to fight for you on that in that situation. So again, reimbursed for those business interruption losses. We talked about the 23 days, that's the average time. And then the third party, any regulatory fines, penalties, and then liability of those third parties. If it's you're legally liable to pay for those losses, then the insurance policy will pay for that. Next slide.
Okay, so I'll jump in here. Going back to our outcomes for today, we were planning on covering the first one, which understand the importance of cyber insurance. I think, we're going to open up here to questions, but I think we hit that one and can obviously answer more questions if you have them. On Thursday for part 2, we're going to go into steps 2 and 3, which are the cyber hygiene and cyber insurance readiness. And then, as Todd mentioned, the utilizing of cyber insurance, because it is getting more complicated and needs some thought and orchestration to it.
And there are a lot of positive things within the insurance policy that we'll discuss on Thursday too, that, as a policy holder, insurance carriers have a lot of resources to bring to the table before a claim or an incident happens. So there's positive things about that. And that's why at the beginning where I stated it's a part of that business continuity plan. With the purchase of the policy, not only do you have the coverage to help pay for claims, but you have resources available that can assist in that time as well. So.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the group or any comments, scenarios, situations that you want to run by?
What we will do, we'll make sure that we have this on our YouTube page, and I'll just put a link into the chat box for those of you, just so you know where that's at. It might take 24 hours or so to get that link up there.
I do have a quick question.
Please do, yeah.
Okay, it's Susie Reamer from Midwest Box Company. Do people actually ask you, do customers actually ask you how many times or if you've ever been compromised in any way? I mean, you were talking about how many people would, how many people do business with people. I mean, how would you ever, I don't think anybody would think to ask us that. I know I would ask a customer that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. One thing I'll say about it is, obviously if it gets in the news, and that's where the kind of management of the story and make the public relations of help of the policy can be beneficial. If it doesn't get in the news and it doesn't get out there, then a lot of people won't know about it, your customers and clients, so they probably won't ask. What we are seeing is a lot of contracts now that are asking if you have cyber coverage and making sure that you show proof of it. Because if you're a key vendor to a client and you have a cyber incident and you're down for those days, they know how impactful that can be. So they're requiring the coverage to be in place. So a conversation may come up then, but I have not heard of any stories where they've specifically asked if you've had cyber incidents and how long have you been down?
And then one other quick question. The ransom stuff where they've really locked you out is different than the social engineering, correct? So
Correct.
the social engineering, you're seeing more of that than the other. Did I understand that correctly?
I don't want to say we're seeing more of that, but we're seeing both. It was social engineering was kind of a rising incident maybe in 2021, a lot during COVID, and even prior to that, where somebody was getting in, acting like I said, a vendor or somebody that you do business with and changing things, and therefore you lose money through that incident. A ransomware is different. That's where they just basically shut down your system. Nobody can access it anywhere, and
So
they
when you-
demand that
Right.
demand that you pay them money.
Correct. But so when you talk about cyber insurance, are those are different entities. And so you're talking about having coverage in both?
You should have coverage in both. It should be included in the one policy that you buy.
Mhm.
It's not two different policies, but within that coverage and that policy that you buy, it should have the extortion payment or ransomware. Ransomware and extortion are kind of used hand in hand. And then it should have a social engineering component to it as well. And like I said in the presentation, the social engineering sometimes is limited. They won't offer the full policy limits of $1 million or 500,000, whatever coverage you have, but they should have, at least $100,000 in there, up to 250,000.
Wow.
But in most policies, the extortion or ransomware is up to that full policy limit.
And Todd, I have a question.
Mhm.
This is Marcia with Manufacturing Works. Todd and Diana, this is such interesting information. I mean, things that I haven't really given any thought to, but one of the things I wonder, how susceptible is a company to having this happen to them more than once? So when they see that they're vulnerable and this has happened, Diana, would you say that then they go in and maybe do a deeper dive into how they can be more proactive with malware? And I don't know, I don't understand it, but what are the odds of it happening over and over?
Yeah, I think obviously once it happens, then there's kind of this, incident response, for lack of a better term, depending on the magnitude, but an evaluation of what's going on and what steps can be taken to prevent it in the future. So as I mentioned earlier, if maybe they got in through someone's email, and maybe we weren't checking the logs or putting in some additional tools to help keep the email safer, they probably would be doing those things maybe after that, maybe first attack, which would make the next one likely. However, I believe we're seeing it more than one time, just because it's sometimes they get a little bit more sophisticated, and I mean, they're smart people and they're out there trying to find ways to trick users into doing the wrong thing.
In my perspective, Marcia, from a claims perspective, in my 10 years, I haven't had a client have two claims. The ones that I have had a claim, to my knowledge, have not had another one, because a lot of the things that Diana said, they kind of fix the problem, and they might not get insurance unless they fix the problem, because obviously they had an incident before. So I hope that helps. But I think we've actually seen a trend in the claims going down because of the stricter underwriting that carriers are putting on companies now, to say, hey, unless you have full MFA in place and unless you do these 6-8 things, then you're not going to get the coverage. And a lot of people know they need it. So we've actually seen a trend in the claims going down, but I think now they're just the bad guys are just trying to figure out the next way that they can, access and do damage, unfortunately.
So when you are renewing someone's insurance policy, Todd, would Oswald go in and do an audit and make sure that they're meeting all the criteria, or do you just give them a list of what they need to be doing?
It's kind of a team approach, and we'll spend some time
Okay,
tomorrow or on Thursday talking about that, but it's very much a team approach with us, the insurance carrier, because they're going to have questions that they ask, and then the IT, both internal IT and any third-party IT folks to kind of check all the boxes.
mhm.
But timing is of utmost importance, of not waiting until the last minute to do so, because then you're going to be rushing. You might not be able to get it done in time, and it might affect the overall process. So I think timing is key in getting well out in front of it to make sure that you have everything. And it's not just to get insurance coverage, it's to protect your business, right? You're just trying to make everything as secure as possible to protect your business. And then you have the insurance, in case it's needed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question.
Sure.
We'll give a minute here for people to come up with any other questions they may have while we have you. I will encourage everyone that these topics that we come up with, our webinars, do come from our members and from attendees. So if you have other ideas, other issues, anything else you'd like to have Manufacturing Works put into a webinar, please just send us an email, let us know.
And I'll just put a plug in, Ron, for Thursday. Please, tune back in on Thursday, because Diana's going to talk a lot about the readiness, right? What can you do to prepare, make sure you're better situated to get the insurance and protect your business, because that's what we're hoping to do throughout this whole process, is to make our clients and Manufacturing Works members just be prepared, know what to do, steps to take, so that you're protecting your company.
Very good. There are a lot of, I've seen the precursors, so I know a lot of charts and graphs. There's a lot of case studies to be talked about. So maybe you can learn from other people's experiences. So I do want to thank everyone. I'm sorry, go ahead, Diana.
No, I said definitely. I think Thursday is going to be jam-packed.
Well, good. With that, thank you, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, we will put this out on our YouTube channel soon. Want to thank you again. Stay healthy, and we will see you Thursday at noon. Thank you much. Bye now.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.